Hi y'all, I'm Louis Sun, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about vibration, law of attraction, and becoming the deliberate creator of your life experience. Anyway, so today I want to talk about the core sort of energetic essence of masculinity and femininity. Because in the spiritual community and in the world at large, there's a lot of airy-fairiness when it comes to the divine masculine and divine feminine and what all that means. Not all of it's inaccurate, obviously. And then in the world at large, I think there is also a misunderstanding of these things just because most people only have like a physical perspective and don't have like a real true understanding of what subtle energy underlies masculinity and femininity. So I actually learned the core of this from Hermeticism and specifically the Kabbalion. So if you want to read that and what Hermeticism has to say about gender, I definitely recommend checking that out. But I really like this understanding because it helps me understand like my own consciousness. It helped me understand people at large, and it helped me understand relationships a lot more clearly. So practically, the masculine sort of the core energy of masculinity, the core principle of it when it comes to consciousness is it's sort of the focusing mechanism of consciousness. Like it focuses source energy through thought to become reality. And then the feminine principle, it sort of receives that masculine focusing and fleshes it out and specifies it into life experiences. And then what happens is that gets fed back into the source consciousness for the masculine to focus a new and refined reality at the feminine who fleshes that out. This is sort of where we get the notion that the masculine leads or dominates. It's because it focuses at the feminine so that the feminine takes that and fleshes that out. And that's why we get the notion that the feminine follows or submits. In some way, that is true, but when we pervert it, and I don't just mean sexually there, when we take the surface level aspect of this understanding and exaggerate it, is where we get our misunderstandings of masculinity and femininity. Like that the masculine is better than the feminine, or that the feminine is just purely emotional and too lucid and can't control herself or her emotions. None of this is really true. It's not exactly untrue, but none of it's really actually true. I want to first talk about this in the context of like an individual consciousness, because this is why mystics say that we all have the masculine and the feminine within us. It's not to say that all of us are this amorphous, non-gendered, non-sexual, all in the middle. That's not really what it's saying. What it's saying is that each and every person needs to integrate both that core masculine focusing mechanism and that core feminine becoming sort of fleshing out mechanism into their life in order to live successfully. And this is why mystics say that we need to sort of become both. Again, this isn't to say that we all need to become like this androgynous perfect mixture of the two. It doesn't work that way, and it shouldn't. And, you know, some people want to be more feminine or want to be more masculine. And this also gets us to the understanding that a male can have like a little bit more of a feminine internal locus, and a female can obviously have more of a masculine internal locus. Now, this doesn't mean that they have to outwardly act or dress or whatever, feminine or masculine or whatever. It's just that their internal locus leans a little bit more towards that core pure focusing mechanism, or that receiving and fleshing out and becoming mechanism of consciousness. And that's really what makes you a little bit more masculine or a little bit more feminine. It's not in the way that you dress, the way that you talk, whatever. Like for me, I have like a very slightly more feminine internal locus. And that means I'm a little more at my core, and I don't want to say my core because, you know, everybody's core is both. But more like psychologically at my core, like I'm a little more malleable, a little bit more receptive, a little bit more submissive, and more creative, more like I said, malleable. And I have to be that way, or the feminine has to be that way in order to receive the energy and to be a little more malleable and dynamic than a masculine consciousness, to flesh things out and consider all the other pieces of reality in that sort of becoming mechanism. You see? Now, this brings us to the core strengths of masculinity and femininity. The core strength of masculinity is detachment. And this is because it does that focusing of energy, and then it kind of has to detach from that outcome in order to allow his reality to manifest. So that's why men, you'll notice men or masculine people, they're kind of better at practicing that detachment, whether it's in relationships or just their life in general. And this is where we kind of see, and Abraham talks about this, why men value freedom more than women do. It's because they can't like be all attachy in that focusing. You know, it would kind of drive them nuts. And when you try to be all attachy and making sure and nitpicky about things, like that's why men get turned off by that, is because, well, they value freedom. They value like being able to focus and detach from that. And then the core strength of femininity is connection, because she must connect to receive that energy from the male and flesh it out. And she also has to connect to the reality at large in order to do a good job of specifying things and fleshing things out. This is why women or feminine people tend to value security, because, well, you need to have a secure sort of connection to that pure focus and a secure connection to the reality at large in order to do your core becoming sort of thing. That is the feminine principle. So we all have to integrate that to a certain degree. So if you find yourself to be a more masculinely oriented person, and this is independent, it's related to, but independent of sexuality and your gender identity or whatever, not completely independent. It's definitely going to relate to and affect your sexuality. But as a masculine person, you have to integrate your ability of connection. Otherwise, you become cold and indifferent, you become complacent, and you become sort of self-aversive. And this is why women see that in men a lot. They see a lot of that self-aversion, self-deception, because what happens is when you get disconnected from your malleability, it's your way or the highway. It's a hardline focus. All you're doing is that focusing mechanism, and you just become cold and shut off from the world. And this is why men, when they're unintegrated, they'll be that cold and shut off person, but they'll manipulate to get the attention of women because they don't want to integrate that malleability. They don't want to integrate their ability of connection. They don't want to integrate that becoming mechanism within themselves, so they have to manipulate women or feminine people in order to sort of at least feel and experience that energy. And then when the feminine does not integrate her masculine aspect or her masculinity or her focusing mechanism, she becomes too pulled by everything. She gets all attachy to not just men, but masculine people in order to, experience that, focus, that focusing. So ultimately, if you find yourself to be predominantly masculine, you need to focus on integrating your ability to connect and really connect with people, not just do what they want you to do so that you can have access to them, but you really need to actually connect with and care about the people in your life, and especially the feminine people in your life. And now if you find yourself to be a predominantly feminine person, you need to integrate your ability of detachment, because you can't get super attachy and addicted to every single person in your life, especially the masculine people. This is how you keep attracting the a-holes into your life. You need to integrate that ability of detachment and have like a sturdy, solid focus. And yes, you want that security, but you don't want attachment, you know? And you want freedom for yourself too. If you got that man that was up your ass in the way that you think you want, you would hate him. So you have to integrate that focusing mechanism, and you have to integrate more of a sturdiness, more of a solidness. This doesn't have to mean that you lose your femininity or you lose your masculinity. This doesn't even have to mean that you have to become perfectly in the middle either. It's just about integrating that. And you'll notice that if you integrate detachment as a more feminine person, you're less attached to outcomes, and your femininity really starts to come to life. Or if you're a more masculine person and you allow yourself to integrate that ability of connection and integrate more malleability, your masculinity really starts to flourish, and your focus it becomes more dynamic, and you're able to connect with people, and it's just great. So yeah, I really hope this helped you understand the airy-fairiness in the spiritual community when it comes to divine union within yourself or within your relationships, and divine masculine and divine feminine. Or if you're a more practical or physically minded person, I hope this helped you take out all that, like, women are too emotional, men are only logical BS, and understand that we all have that within us, and feminine people can be completely rational, and men can be completely irrational. So I think all of that stuff, all the physically minded stuff about it, it just comes from observing men and women without having like a true, really subtle awareness of what femininity and masculinity is. And I think that Hermeticism does a wonderful job at describing that. It helps me unlock all this knowledge and understand myself and how I relate to other people and how I experience, especially romantic relationships. So yeah, I hope this helped you clarify some things. I love you. Have a good week.